Beyond the oak shadow, the smith of San Candelario. Close your eyes and let the world outside your window fade into the quiet of the night. Tonight, we journey to the rugged heart of medieval Spain, where the air smells of wild thyme and the shadows of the Sierra de Gredos stretch long over the valley of San Candelario. You are the protagonist of this tale, a child of the forge with a restless heart and a mysterious map that leads into the deep ancient silence of the mountains. Alongside a weary knight, a clever bard, and a sturdy stonebreaker, you will discover that some secrets are carved in stone and others are carried in the blood. Sidle under your blankets, listen to the rhythm of the road, and prepare to find what was forgotten beyond the oak shadow. You awaken to the sound of bells. They are faint at first, like a dream-soft chimes floating up from somewhere below, mingling with the last scraps of sleep. For a moment you lie still, caught between worlds. The straw mattress under your back crackles quietly when you shift. The thin blanket itches at your shins. A cool breeze sends a shiver across your skin, sneaking in under the warped wooden shutters. You open your eyes. Your small room swims into focus. Rough whitewashed walls, a low ceiling with dark beams spreading like ribs overhead. Dust motes spin and dance in the slanting light that seeps through the cracks in the shutters. On a peg by the door hangs your worn wool cloak, its edges frayed, smelling faintly of smoke and sweat. On the floor beside the bed sits a wooden chest with iron bindings, dented from one too many careless kicks. The bells sound again, clearer this time. They're not the soft, solemn toll of the church bells. These are thinner, brighter goat bells, jangling wildly as the herd is driven out through the village gates. The familiar chorus of hooves on cobblestone rises to join them, the shepherd's sharp whistle cracking the morning open. You push yourself up, the straw rustling like dry leaves. The air smells of cold stone and old ash from last night's fire, with a faint trace of lavender from the little bundle your mother tied above the hearth before she left this world. That scent has faded over the years, but it is still there, like a memory clinging to the stones. You swing your feet to the floor. The wooden boards are cool and slightly rough beneath your bare soles, worn smooth in some places and splintery in others. As you stand, the floor creaks in its familiar complaint, a sound you've heard every morning of your life. Outside your window, the village of San Candelario is waking. You cross the room in 3 strides and lift the latch. The shutters stick for a moment, then yield with a groan, spilling golden morning light into your little chamber. You squint and lean your elbows on the stone sill. Below you, the narrow street is already busy. A woman in a faded red skirt sweeps dust and leaves from her doorstep, her broom scratching rhythmically across the stone. A boy runs past carrying a basket of bread, crust still steaming, the smell of yeast and toasted flour curling up toward your window like an invitation. From the tavern at the corner drifts the tang of spilled wine and wood smoke. Somewhere out of sight, the sharp metallic music of hammer on anvil rings out, steady, purposeful, as comforting to you as your own heartbeat. You breathe in deeply, letting the scents of the village fill your chest. Warm bread, dung, smoke, olives brined in great clay jars, the faint sweetness of figs laid out to dry on wicker trays. The sky above the crooked rooftops is a clear, promising blue, streaked with a few wisps of high cloud. Swallows wheel and dive, crying shrilly as they chase invisible insects. And beyond the rooftops, beyond the patchwork of fields and olive groves that spread out like a quilt in shades of green and brown, rise the mountains. The Sierra de Gredos looms on the horizon, a jagged wall of stone and shadow, their peaks still smudged with the pale remnants of last winter's snow. In the morning light they seem almost close enough to touch. If you stretched out your hand far enough, perhaps you could brush your fingers along their rugged spine. You have stared at those mountains your entire life. You have seen them wreathed in storm, their summits veiled in black cloud that flashes with distant lightning. You have watched the sun sink behind them, turning their edges to molten gold. You have traced their shape in the dust with a stick, when the steam on your window and the condensation on your cup of watered wine. You have heard stories, oh, so many stories, about what lies beyond, old kingdoms swallowed by time, ruins of forgotten cities, forests so thick the sun never touches the ground, rivers that run silver even in the dark of night. You have never gone farther than the foothills. San Candelario is a small, stubborn dot of life pressed against the rising land. The path to the mountains is familiar. Terraced fields, scrubby pines, the occasional shepherd's hut, a little stone shrine with a weathered wooden cross where people leave dried flowers and muttered prayers. You've walked it many times, helping your father bring back wood or ore from the lower slopes. But always you have turned back before the path steepens, before the wind changes, before the world becomes truly wild. You have always turned back. Today will be different. You can feel it in the air, like the charged heaviness before a summer storm. There is something waiting, coiled somewhere on the far side of this ordinary morning, and it hums under your skin like a plucked string. Behind you, on the small table near the bed, lies the reason. You turn away from the window and cross back to it. The table is scarred and stained. Burn marks from candle drips form little constellations across its surface. Beside the stub of a tallow candle, beside the clay cup and last night's crust of bread, lies a folded scrap of old parchment. Its edges are frayed, the surface crisscrossed with dark creases where it has been folded and unfolded 100 times. When you pick it up, it crackles softly between your fingers. You open it. The map glows dully in the half-light of your room, lines of faded ink drawing jagged mountains, twisting rivers, scattered dots that might be towns or ruins. The hand that drew them had been hurried but careful, the strokes confident even where the ink blotched and faded. You know each mark by heart now. You could trace them in your sleep. Your fingertip comes to rest, as it always does, on the little cross near the bottom edge. Beside it, a name is written in cramped, spidery script. San Candelario. Your village, your life. The forge, the fields, the church whose bells you know too well, the tavern where the men argue over dice and stories, the well whose bucket rope has worn a permanent groove in the stone. From that cross, a line snakes northward. It winds between sketched hills, crosses a river, then climbs into the drawn mountains. There, somewhere in the tangle of peaks and valleys, a symbol sits alone, a circle broken by jagged lines like the branches of a tree, its roots curling downward, its crown reaching up. Next to the symbol, in smaller script, just legible if you tilt the parchment toward the light, is a single word. L-L-A, wave. Key. You remember the night the map came into your hands as clearly as if it were unfolding again now, in this room. It had been 3 nights ago. The tavern had been hot and crowded, smoke thick in the rafters. You'd been carrying jugs of sour red wine to men whose laughter grew louder and rougher with every cup. The air had been heavy with sweat, spilled ale, roasting meat, and the sharp tang of garlic and onions frying in oil. He had appeared in the doorway just after sundown. A stranger in a travel-stained cloak, boots powdered with dust the color of old bone. He had stood there for a moment, blinking in the dim light, taking in the room with eyes the color of storm clouds. Conversations had faltered. The dice had paused mid-roll. People had turned to look at him, curiosity mingled with caution. There were always stories about strangers. Some said that in times past, when kings rode with their banners unfurled and battles shook the earth, men like this had been messengers between realms, carrying secrets and commands. Others said they were nothing but vagabonds and thieves, bringing trouble with them wherever they went. In San Candelario, strangers were rare enough to be a story all by themselves. You had felt something twist in your chest when you saw him, something like recognition, though you knew you'd never seen that lined, weather-beaten face before. He had taken a corner table, ordered nothing but water, and watched. Watched the men play at cards and dice, watched the women ferry plates and jugs, watched you when you thought you were not worth watching at all. Every time you passed, he felt his gaze on you, weighing you, measuring you. Later, when the tavern had emptied some, when the air cooled and the shouting softened to murmurs, he had beckoned you over with 2 fingers. You, he had said, his voice roughened by dust and disuse, Come, sit a moment. You had hesitated. Your father does not like you talking with strangers, especially not alone in corners. But your father had already gone home, and the tavern keeper was in the back arguing with the butcher about the price of meat. And the stranger's eyes, though sharp and tired, did not seem cruel. So you had sat. You carry yourself like someone who wants to be somewhere else, he had observed, studying your face. Your eyes stay on the door and the windows more than on the tables. Heat had flushed your cheeks. He'd muttered something defensive, you don't remember what now, but he had only smiled, a quick, crooked flash of amusement. I have walked this kingdom from the sea to the frontier, he had said then, leaning closer so his words were just for you. I have crossed mountains where the eagles nest and forded rivers that remember the faces of the dead. I have seen cities of marble and villages of mud. I know the look of a soul that is not content to die where it was born. Your heart had hammered, words had crowded your throat and died there, choking on your own fear. Without breaking eye contact, the stranger had reached into his satchel. The leather had creaked softly as he withdrew the folded parchment and laid it on the table between you. This was not meant for me, he'd said. I have carried it too long. Maps do not like to be kept idle. They spoil like meat left in the sun. They want to be followed. He pushed it toward you with a calloused finger. If it calls to you, follow it. If it does not, throw it in the fire when I leave, and forget we ever spoke. You'd look down at the map, at the lines and symbols, and that single, small word, LAE. Your chest had felt too tight, your mouth too dry. What is it a key to? You'd asked. He had tilted his head, considering. Once, long ago, our kings made a promise to the land itself, he'd said. They swore to guard the old powers, not to use them for war or greed. That promise has been forgotten, but the land does not forget. Oaths cling to stone and water and root. His fingers had brushed the parchment with a tenderness that made your throat ache. Somewhere in those mountains is a door that has not been opened in 100 years. This map shows where the key sleeps. And what happens, you had whispered, though part of you had not wanted to know, if the key is found? His gaze had grown distant then, as if he were seeing something beyond the tavern's low ceiling and smoke-blackened rafters. Then a choice must be made, he'd said quietly, about what kind of world we wish to hand to those who come after us. You'd swallowed hard. The tavern noise had surged back around you, the clink of cups, the low rumble of men's voices, the slap of bare feet on planks. Somehow in love it seemed as real as the small rectangle of parchment on the table. Why give this to me? You'd asked finally. Why not take it yourself? He'd laughed then, a tired sound threaded with something like regret. I have followed too many roads already, he'd said. My bones are not what they were, and I am not who I was when this first came to me. His eyes had returned to your face, sharp and searching. Besides, when I came in tonight, there were 20 people in this room. 19 looked away when they saw a stranger. Only one stared out the window when there was nowhere in the room worth watching. I choose that one. You touched the map with trembling fingers. The parchment had felt unexpectedly warm, as if it had been sitting near a hearth instead of in a leather satchel. Think on it, he said, leaning back. You owe nothing to me. You owe nothing to old promises made by dead kings. But if you feel the pull, he made a small shrug, the road is waiting. Now, 3 mornings later, you stand in your small room in San Candelario, the map open in your hands, and you feel that pull like a rope around your ribs. You close the parchment and tuck it carefully inside your shirt against your skin. The edges scratch faintly through the linen, solid and undeniable. Your father will be expecting you at the forge. You move quickly now. Shirt over your head, thick homespun wool, scratching your shoulders. Trousers pulled up, patched at one knee with a darker square. You fasten your belt, the leather creaking softly, and slide your small knife into its sheath. Your mother's old charm, a tiny silver coin with a hole punched through it, strung on a leather thong, hangs cold at your throat. You touch it for luck, as you always do. At the door, you take down your satchel, the one you use for errands to the market and the fields. You hesitate only a moment before adding things you would usually leave behind. A second piece of cheese, the end of the cured sausage, a skin of water filled to the brim, a length of cord, a small, carefully wrapped bundle of herbs from the box your mother left, dried rosemary, thyme, and something else whose name you never learned, but whose sharp, clean scent makes your head feel clearer. You drop them in, then add your cloak over your arm. The morning is mild now, but the mountains are another world. Up there, the wind has teeth. You pause with your hand on the latch. If you go out this door and turn right, you will walk the same path you walk every day, along the alley, past the tavern, to the forge where your father stands sweating before the fire. You will work the bellows and hammer nails and shoes until your arms ache. You will eat stew at midday, bread and cheese at night. You will sleep on your straw mattress and dream of mountains. If you turn left, you will walk down past the well and the baker and the church, past the last little houses where chickens scratch in the dust, past the low stone wall that holds back the fields. You will pass through the old gate under the oak trees and step onto the road that leads to the foothills. You will keep walking until the roof tiles of San Candelario vanish behind you. You stand there, heart pounding so hard it shakes your ribs, feeling the world tilt on the knife edge of this moment. Then you lift the latch and step outside. The alley is narrow and full of light, the kind that makes edges sharp and colors bright. Senora Lucia sits on her doorstep shelling peas into a bowl, the green pods piling at her feet. She looks up as you come out and squints. "You're late for the forge," she observes. "Your father will tan your hide." "Maybe," you say, forcing a smile that feels wobbly. "Maybe he'll be too busy to notice." She snorts softly and flicks a pea at you. It bounces off your boot and rolls away. You turn left. The village unfolds around you, familiar and strange all at once. You pass the well, where two girls argue in shrill voices about who drew water first. You pass the baker's wide-open door, heat rolling out in a wave that smells of bread and ash and sesame seeds. You pass the low, whitewashed church where Father Alonso sweeps the threshold, his thin face creasing in a frown when he sees your satchel. "Where are you off to, then?" he calls, leaning on his broom. "Up the road," you answer, which is the truth, if not the whole of it. His gaze sharpens as it travels from your boots to your packed bag to the cloak over your arm. "Be back before dark," he says, voice softer. "The hills have teeth when the sun goes down." You nod, though you do not know if you will keep that promise. At the edge of the village, where the last houses huddle together as if reluctant to let one another go, a low stone wall runs along the road. Beyond it, fields ripple in the breeze, wheat, barley, rows of beans climbing their sticks, neat lines of strawberry plants under straw. Old men lean on their hoes and watch you pass with narrow eyes, their faces browned and wrinkled by sun and years. The road dips, then rises gently toward a pair of ancient oak trees that arch over it, their branches entwining like clasped fingers. Their trunks are massive, their bark rough and furrowed. They have stood here longer than memory, longer than story. Every child in the village has been told to touch them for luck when leaving and returning. Your hand goes to your knife instead. You stop for a moment at the place where the shade of the oaks touches the packed earth of the road. The leaves rustle overhead, whispering secrets you cannot quite catch. A breeze carries down from the hills, cooler and drier than the soft valley air, smelling faintly of pine and stone and something wilder, something sharp that makes your lungs feel suddenly too small. You look back. San Candelario lies behind you, sun washing the rooftops in soft gold. Smoke rises from chimneys, straight and lazy in the still air. You can just make out the black mouth of the forge and the pale flash of your father's bare arms as he lifts his hammer. For a heartbeat, it is almost unbearable. The thought of that familiar weight, the scrape of metal, the comfort of knowing exactly what the day will bring. A dog barks in the distance. A rooster crows as if it's dawn again. The church bell chimes once, a simple, solid sound. You turn your back on all of it and step beneath the oaks. The shade wraps around you like cool water. The air grows quieter, as if the trees swallow some of the noise from the village. Your boots whisper on the dirt. As you pass under the arch of their branches, a shiver runs through you. starting at the nape of your neck and working its way down your spine. For a brief, vertiginous instant, you feel as if you are stepping not just out of San Candelario, but out of your old life. As if the world behind you seals itself like a door, and the one ahead swings open on creaking hinges. When you emerge into the sun on the far side of the oaks, you are breathing faster than the walk warrants. Your palms are damp. The map presses against your chest with every heartbeat. You do not look back again. The road climbs. Dust rises around your boots, fine and pale, smelling of sun-baked earth and crushed time. Grass crowds the verge, studded with little yellow and purple flowers. Bees hum. Somewhere to your left, a lark trills a high, bubbling song that seems to go on and on without a breath. The village falls away behind you, becoming a cluster of red-tiled roofs, then a handful of smudges, then finally just a faint suggestion of color at the base of the hills. The land changes under your feet. The gentle, soft soil of the fields gives way to rockier ground. Low stone walls and neat rows of crops are replaced by scrubby shrubs and gnarled bushes. The air grows thinner, cooler. The scents shift, less manure and smoke, more resin and dust, and the faint metallic tang of distant snow. You walk. For a while you're alone with your thoughts and the steady rhythm of your steps. The road bends and dips, climbing in easy switchbacks. Sweat trickles down your back beneath your shirt. You loosen the ties at your throat and push your sleeves up, feeling the breeze cool the dampness on your skin. Your mind wanders. You imagine what your father is doing now. Has he noticed your absence? Is he cursing your name between hammer blows? Will he be angry, or will some part of him understand? You think of the way his eyes sometimes go distant as he stares at the mountains, the lines around his mouth softening for a moment before he catches himself and barks at you to fetch more coal. Once I thought I'd leave too. He told you years ago when you were young enough to sit cross-legged on the forge floor and not get in the way. The fire had been low, the day's work done. He'd been rubbing oil into a new horseshoe, the metal gleaming in the feeding light. But your mother wanted a house that didn't move, and I wanted her. So I stayed. There's no shame in staying. Remember that. You have remembered. You just haven't decided if you believe it. The road narrows. Soon it will stop being a road at all. You pause in the shade of a leaning pine to drink from your water skin. The liquid is lukewarm but welcome. It tastes faintly of leather and of the well on the village lime and earth and the ghost of moss. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, then dig into your satchel for a piece of bread. The crust is harder now than it was this morning, but it still smells of yeast and smoke. You tear off a chunk and chew, feeling the solid weight of it settle in your belly. A noise carries on the wind then, a distant, fluting melody that does not belong to any bird you know. You freeze, bread halfway to your mouth. There it is again. A series of high, piercing notes, impossible to tell if they're laughter, music, or something else entirely. They ride the breeze down from a rise ahead, coming and going as the wind shifts. You swallow the bread and listen more closely. After a moment, other sounds join it. The creak of leather, the clink of metal, the light patter of hooves. Not bandits, you think first. The stories say bandits move quietly, like wolves. They do not announce themselves with flutes. You adjust your grip on your satchel strap and walk on. As you crest the next low hill, the slope ahead of you dips into a wide, shallow valley. The grass here is taller, rippling in waves under the wind. A narrow stream threads through the middle, its banks bright with wildflowers and willows. And there, splashing in the water, arguing loudly in rapid Castilian, and generally making as much noise as 3 people possibly can, is a group of travelers. 2 of them are mounted. One, on a dappled gray mare, wears a faded red surcoat over chainmail. The sunlight glints off the metal where the cloth is frayed. A sword hangs at their hip, its hilt wrapped in worn leather. Their long dark hair is tied back with a strip of cloth, revealing a lean, tanned face notable for a nose that has very clearly been broken at least once. The other rider perches astride a stocky brown mule, legs dangling, lute slung across their back. Rings flash on their fingers as they gesture dramatically, arguing with the third member of the group, a short, broad-shouldered figure squatting by the stream, sleeves rolled up, hands plunged into the water. That one's hair is fiery red, braided back from a freckled, sunburned face. A massive iron hammer rests on the grass beside them, its head as big as your own. The fluting sound, you realize, is coming from the person on the mule. They lift a small silver whistle to their lips, blow a snatch of melody, then break off to shout something over their shoulder. The warrior on the mare laughs, a full-bodied sound that carries easily on the wind. You hesitate for a moment at the top of the rise. Travelers. Your father has always told you to be wary of strangers on the road. The stories of bandits and press gangs and worse are not just for frightening children. But these three do not move like cutthroats. There is too much lightness in their argument, too much carelessness in the way they splash water at each other. Besides, you remind yourself, you are no helpless child. You have a knife. You have a map. You have, if you're honest, very little idea what you're doing. You straighten your shoulders and walk down into the valley. They notice you halfway. The one on the mare turns first, hand going instinctively to the sword hilt. Their eyes flick over you, boots, satchel, cloak, then relax slightly. The bard lifts the whistle from their lips and grins, their face open and curious. The hammer wielder shakes water from their hands, wipes them on their already damp shirt, and stands, squinting. "Hoy!" the rider calls as you approach. Their voice is clear and strong, carrying a hint of command. "You there, traveling alone this far up the road? Either you are very brave or very foolish. Or both," the red-haired one adds cheerfully. You stop a few paces away, the stream murmuring between you. The water smells clean and cold, edged with the scent of wet stone and crushed grass. "I could say the same," you reply, trying to keep your voice steady. "Are you not far from any village as well?" The bard laughs, a bright, bubbling sound that fits their quick eyes and nimble fingers. "We," they say, patting the mule's neck. "We are never far from anywhere. We carry the world with us, in Remedios' saddlebags." They lean forward, stage whispering as if telling you a secret. "Besides, we are three, and very loud. Bandits prefer quieter suppers." The warrior swings a leg over their mare's neck and drops lightly to the ground. Up close, you can see they carry their armor with the ease of long practice. Their surcoat bears a faded emblem, a golden sun half hidden behind stylized mountains. "Martin de Aranda," they say, giving you a short, informal bow. Knight-errant, currently very far from any sensible employment. This menace here, they jerk their thumb toward the bard, is Isabel, who claims to be the greatest musician north of Toledo. Claims? Isabel protests, clutching at their chest as if mortally wounded. The songs themselves weep when I walk by. The lutes, all of them, everywhere, yearn for my touch. And I, the red-haired one announces, planting the hammer head down in the grass and resting their arms on its handle. Emarnun, son of nobody you've heard of, breaker of stones, mender of wheels, fixer of broken things, including, occasionally, Martine's head. Martine snorts. "This is my company, such as it is. You hesitate a fraction. Your name feels small all of a sudden, thin and plain in your mouth, compared to their bright titles, but you speak it anyway." "And where," Martine asks, eyes narrowing slightly, "are you going, carrying half a pantry on your back, with boots still clean enough to squeak, and no dust in your hair?" You open your mouth and close it again, the truth catching on your tongue. You have never been good at lying, and those storm-gray eyes seem to strip pretense away with little effort. So you choose a piece of the truth and hold it like a shield. "I'm going to the mountains," you say. "There's something I need to find." "The mountains," Arnon repeats, whistling softly. "Big place, lots of rocks. You'll need to be more specific, friend, or you'll be wandering until your boots fall apart and your toes know the way better than your head." Yasabo leans forward, eyes bright with curiosity. "Is it treasure?" they breathe. "A dragon hoard, a lost crown, a hidden monastery full of monks who brew wine so perfect it makes the angels drunk?" You can't help it, you snort a laugh. "Nothing like that," you say. Then, after a heartbeat, "I think Martine studies you in silence for a moment. Their gaze drops briefly to your chest, where the edge of the map presses faintly at your shirt. You curse yourself for not hiding it better, though you're not sure how you could have. When Martine's eyes return to your face, something has changed in them. Curiosity, yes, but also a wary kind of interest. Recognition, almost. Let me guess, they say quietly. Someone gave you a little piece of parchment. Old, worn, ink faded in places but still stubborn. They said something about a key and an old promise and a door that should not be opened lightly. Your stomach drops. How do you... Because once, Martine interrupts, voice soft with memory, many years ago, before I took up this battered armor and this ridiculous quest of finding whatever I'm trying to find, I was you. They lift their hand palm up. Me, I... For a second you clutch at your shirt instinctively, fingers digging into the cloth over the map. Then, slowly, you reach inside, pull the parchment free, and hand it over. Martine unfolds it with a reverence that makes your throat tighten. Hernan and Isabel crowd close, peering over their shoulders. The streams burble and the winds rustle, fill the silence. There it is, your life, your choice, all drawn in ink and hope. San Candelario, the winding line to the mountains, the symbol, LLV. Martine traces the circle of the symbol with one calloused finger. Different hand, they murmur. Same mark. They glance up at you. Someone wants this door opened very badly. Or not opened, Hernan points out. Maybe the map is meant to keep people away, tempt them into getting lost. Would you be able to resist it? Isabel asks, eyes dancing. If someone put that in your hands and said, forget it? No. They answered their own question. No, of course you wouldn't. I wouldn't. Martine certainly didn't. They tapped the parchment. So, you're following it. Alone. I was, you say. Then add, because something inside you refuses to be cautious now, until I met you. Martine folds the map carefully and hands it back. You shouldn't go alone, they say simply. Whatever waits at the end of that line, it is old. Old things do not like to be disturbed. They wake badly. They looks at Hernan. What do you think? Hernan shrugs, making their hammer rise and fall. I think I was getting bored of digging wells for stubborn villagers who pay us in goat cheese and insults, they say. I say we see where the road goes. If there's a door, maybe something behind it needs fixing. Isabel practically vibrates with excitement. I have half a ballad written already, they declare. Listen, you went alone to seek your fate upon the stony Grados gate, but met 3 rogues beside a stream who tied your life into their scheme. Please stop, Martine sighs. Then they look at you, one eyebrow lifting. Well, do you want company? We snore. We complain. Isabel sings at terrible moments. Hernan cooks stew so thick your spoon stands up in it. But we know the roads, and I have seen some of the signs your map hints at. You barely have to think about it. Yes, you say. Your voice comes out steadier than you feel. Yes, I would be glad of company. Isabel whoops. Hernan grins. Martine smiles, small but genuine. Good, they say, swinging back into the saddle with fluid ease. Then let us be companions for a while at least. If we part as friends. If we stay together to the end, they shrug. We will see what end this map has in mind. Isabel strikes up a jaunty tune on their lute as Hernan hefts their hammer and falls into step beside you. The rhythm of their playing matches the rhythm of your feet, turning your walk into a march. The road bends, the valley narrows. The world begins, slowly, to change. By midday, the foothills are behind you. The path, no longer a proper road, winds up through a stand of twisted pines. Their needles whisper overhead, resin scent sharp and clean. The air has cooled. Your breath ghosts faintly when you blow it out. The sun filters through branches and broken shafts, painting the ground in patches of light and shadow. Underfoot, last year's needles crunch softly, releasing little bursts of smell like crushed herbs. Isabel's songs have shifted with the climb. In the lower slopes, they were all bright tavern tunes and clever, quick verses. Up here, they lean into slower, older melodies that seem to belong to the rustle of the trees and the distant cry of unseen hawks. Their voice ranges clear and strong, sometimes wordless, weaving through the pines like an invisible thread. Hernan hums along between bites of dried sausage, hammer slung over one shoulder. Martine rides at the front, eyes alert, hand never far from their sword. You walk between them, the map a warm, constant presence at your chest. Tell me, Isabel says at one point, sidling their mule closer until their knee bumps your hip, what do you think the key opens? You consider. A door, you say slowly. The travelers said something about a door, and a promise, and a choice. Doors are never just doors, Isabel says wisely. Not in stories, they're always doors to something. Treasure, doom, love, death, exile, home. The trick is figuring out which before you open them. That's not how doors work, Hernan points out. You can't know what's behind one until you look, unless there's a draft or a smell. They wrinkle their nose. We once opened a cellar in Trujillo that smelled so bad I swear my eyebrows tried to climb off my face. Martine glances back over their shoulder. Whatever it is, they say, it's something big enough to echo, old enough to leave marks in stone. I have seen things in these mountains that are not in any church's stories. Men's tales are short. The earth's memory is long. You open your mouth to ask what, exactly, Martine has seen, but the path curves sharply, and all talk dies on your tongues. The trees fall away. Before you lies a gorge. It splits the land like a wound, its walls dropping sheer for 20, 30, 40 meters, the bottom lost in shadow. A narrow river churns along the bottom, water foaming white against jagged rocks. The air that rises from it is cold and damp, smelling of slick stone and the distant sea. The sound of it fills the space between your bones, a constant rushing war. There is, you note with some distress, no bridge. Hernan says, peering over the edge, that is inconvenient. Isabel leans dangerously far out of their saddle to gaze downward.
That's not so bad, they say cheerfully. I can nearly see the bottom.
I only fall from trees when I can't see the ground. That makes no sense, Martine mutters, scanning the far side. The opposite wall is not entirely smooth. Here and there, ledges jet out, tufts of grass clinging to cracks. A faint path continues on the far side, snaking upward along the mountain's flank. You swallow. Maybe there's a better place to cross downstream, you suggest. Martine shakes their head. The map? They ask. You fumble with the parchment, hands suddenly clumsy, and unfold it carefully. The ink lines stare up at you, brisk and unhelpful. The path you've been following comes straight to a jagged line marked with little triangles. This gorge, you realize, and then continues on the other side. Someone has drawn a small sketch of what might be a rope or a plank here, a scribbled suggestion of a connection that no longer exists. Once there was a bridge, Martine says, pointing. I remember hearing about it. Wooden, rope. Old even when I was a child. Their mouth tightens. The storms a few years back, they took more than just trees. So we build a new one, Hernan says simply. Isabel blanks. With what? They demand. Do you have a spare bridge in your pack? Did I miss the part where we bought planks and nails and a dozen laborers? Hernan kicks a nearby pine trunk experimentally. We have trees, they say. We have hands. We have rope. We do not have time to walk for days hunting for some kindly farmer's ford. Your map says straight, yes? Then straight we go. You glance at Martine. They study the gorge, the trees, the sky, calculating. A small bridge, they concede. Not for Remedios. They nod at Isabel's mule. We'll lead the animals down and up another way if we have to. But for us, yes. We can make it. And so you build a bridge. It is not a task you have ever done before. But Hernan takes charge with a sureness born of a lifetime wrestling with uncooperative materials. Under their direction, you and Yasabel strip branches from 2 straight sturdy pines with your knives, the scent of fresh sap sharp and sticky on your fingers. Martine climbs like a cat, nimble despite armor, tying ropes around trunks at the edge with quick, practiced knot. The work is hard and fast and frightening. You rasp your palms raw, dragging trunks across rough ground. Your shoulders burn as you help lever them into position. Your heart thunders in your ears when Martine edges out onto a ledge halfway down to secure the lower ropes, the wind tugging at their surcoat, stone crumbling under their boots. The gorge yawns below, its breath cold and moist. The river's roar rises up, tasting of iron and old rain. When the first log settles into place across the gap, your breath leaves you in a rush you didn't know you were holding. Not so bad, Yasabel mutters, peering at the narrow span. It's only... They squint. Well, it's only a very, very long way down. It will hold if we don't dance, Hernan says. So don't dance. They wipe sap and sweat from their brow, leaving a smear of green. Martine goes first. They test each step before putting their full weight on it. The logs creak, the ropes groan, but the structure holds. When they reach the far side, they turn and nod. Your turn, they call. You look at the bridge, at the far side, at the map, at your boots. The world seems suddenly very narrow, just you, the rough bark under your soles, and the yawning emptiness beneath. The wind plucks at your hair, whispers up from the depths of the gorge, tasting of river and stone and something older. Isabel whispers conspiratorially at your shoulder. We could go back to the tavern and pretend this was all a very vivid dream. You laugh weakly. 1 step. The logs feel solid enough under your weight, but your toes curl inside your boots all the same. You keep your eyes on Martine, on the firm line of their shoulders, not on the blur of water far below. The smell of sap and rope and your own fear surrounds you. Another step. And another. Halfway across, the wind gusts. The bridge sways. You flail, arms pinreeling, a cry stuck in your throat. The world tilts. For a heartbeat, you are sure you are falling, sure you will feel empty air under your feet, and then the unforgiving shock of water and stone. But a hand catches your forearm like an iron band. Martine, kneeling, arm outstretched, muscles corded. Their fingers bite into your skin. Breathe, they say, voice calm despite the strain. Slowly, look at me, not at the river. You drag in a shuddering breath, then another. The smell of leather and sweat and iron steadies you. You nod, unable to find your voice. Good, Martine says. They do not let go until your boots find stone on the other side. Your knees almost give out when you step onto solid ground. Hernan's hand lands on your shoulder like a reassuring blow. First gorge always feels like that, they say. Second is worse. Third is better. By the 10th you'll be skipping. Isabel claps as they cross, stretching their arms wide for balance and yodeling half a tune into the wind. When all 4 of you are on the far side, the bridge creaking behind you, you feel something in your chest unclench and reform. The distance between you and San Candelario has become more than just miles. It has become a gorge, crossed on trembling legs and rope in trust. You walk on. The mountains close in. The path narrows to a thread knocked into the rock, clinging to the side of slopes that fall away sharply to valleys below. Your calves burn with the constant climb. Your lungs ache in the thin, cold air. Ice clings in shaded crevices, even though the sun burns bright overhead, its light reflecting harshly off pale stone. The scents are different here. The world smells of dust and lichen, of cold iron seams running unseen through the rock. Occasionally the breeze shifts and carries up the faintest trace of rosemary or wild sage from hitting ledges where stubborn plants dig their roots into the smallest cracks. Birds wheel far above, black against the burning blue. Their cries are thin and lonely. You find your rhythm, step breathe, step breathe. The steady clack of Martine's mail, the heavier thump of Hernan's boots, The soft clop of Remedios's hooves behind you, the occasional creak of Jezebel's lute strings as they idly pluck, all weave into a rough music of motion. At night, you make camp in sheltered hollows, high-walled on 3 sides, open to the sky. You build small, careful fires from stunted, twisted shrubs and driftwood carried up by storms. The flames smell of resin and char, a tang that clings to your clothes and hair. Under the wheeling stars, you listen to stories. What if it's made from your fire being brought from the center? It feels more fear of the center than the feed you walk. Martine speaks little of their own past, but once, when Hernan snores loudly enough to shake pebbles loose, they tell you of a time they followed a different map, not to a key, but to a war. The king's banners were red and gold, they say quietly, gaze fixed on the coals. We marched north for weeks. By the time we reached the front, there were more vulture wings in the sky than flags. The smell. They grimace. You never lose that smell. Burnt wool, blood, fear, ash. You say you'd rather smell goats and bread and forge smoke any day. So would I, Martine says. But sometimes the world does not ask what we would rather. It asks what we will do. Isabel has a different kind of war in their memories. The first time I played in a noble's hall, they say, eyes bright with the fire's reflection, I thought it would be magic. Silk and gold and laughter. It was silk and gold and laughter, yes, but the kind that has teeth. They listened to my songs and then laughed at the wrong parts. They made me change the endings to flatter them, turn tragedies into comedies because they didn't like sad songs. It felt like breaking bones inside my chest. They grinned suddenly. So I made up a ballad about a lord with ears so big he could hear every insult to himself, no matter how far away. They loved it. Never realized it was about them. Hernan's stories are simpler. A well dug so deep the air at the bottom tasted like stone. A cartwheel mended so cleverly it outlasted the mule pulling it. A child's toy hammered from scrap metal that made the child's eyes shine brighter than any treasure. You mend the world in little pieces, they tell you, flipping a potato in the coals. Brick by brick, wheel by wheel, bone by bone. That's all anyone can really do. The big stories, they're just a lot of small ones stacked on top of each other until people crane their necks to see the top. You listen and watch the sparks spin up into the star-strewn sky, and you think of your village, of your father at the forge, of the map against your chest, and the way your feet keep moving when you could turn back at any time. On the third night, you dream. You stand in a valley of stone. The mountains around you rear up like walls. In front of you, where the map's mark would be if the world were parchment, a sheer cliff rises, its face smooth as if carved by a giant's chisel. In the center of that wall is a door. It is not a door in any sense your waking mind would recognize. No planks, no metal, no hinges. It is simply a vertical line of darkness, a little taller than you are, etched into the stone. Around it, lines spider out in patterns like roots, like lightning, like the veins in marble. Those lines pulse faintly with light the color of dawn. You feel the key, not in your hand, but in your chest. A warmth, a hum. A sense that something inside you is shaped exactly to fit something in that door. You reach out and wake with your hand pressed against your sternum, nails biting through cloth. The fire has burned down to embers. The others sleep, faces soft and unguarded. The sky above is a riot of stars, the Milky Way a ghostly river you feel you could step into if only you climbed high enough. You lie there, heart thudding, and know with absolute bone-deep certainty you are getting close. The next day, the mountains tighten into a pass. The path becomes a narrow cut between towering walls of stone, streaked with quartz and darker seams. The air tastes different here, charged, metallic, like the sky before lightning. Your hair prickles at your nape. Even Yesabel falls quiet, only humming under their breath like they're afraid to stir something sleeping. Do you hear that? Hernan whispers at one point, pausing mid-step. You cock your head listening. At first there is nothing but the whisper of wind funneling through the pass and the scrape of your own boots. Then, very faintly, a low, steady throbbing reaches your ears, like a distant drum or a heartbeat. It's the earth, Martine says softly. Old places remember. Sometimes they remember so hard the rock itself moves with it. The throbbing grows stronger as you go. It settles into your bones, into the meat of your shoulders and thighs, into your teeth. Your own pulse sinks to it, your heart answering the mountain's beat. The smell of iron is stronger now, overlaying everything. The pass widens abruptly. You step out into a hidden basin, ringed on all sides by sheer walls of stone. Above, the sky is a distant, perfect oval of blue. At the center of the basin stands an ancient oak tree, gnarled and massive, its roots like the backs of slumbering beasts. Its branches spread wide, leaves dark and glossy despite the thin soil. Around its trunk, the ground is bare rock. In front of that tree, in the cliff face, is the door from your dream. No hinges, no handle, just a vertical seam of darkness, etched into the stone, surrounded by branching lines that glow faintly blue-white, like veins of trapped lightning. The air here smells of sap and stone and rain that has not yet fallen. The throbbing under your feet is strongest near the door, so deep you feel it in your marrow. Isabel lets out a long, low whistle. Well, they say softly. That's ominous. Renan is already scanning the ground, eyes narrowed, looking for traps of a more mundane kind. Loose stones, treacherous cracks, unstable ledges. They prod the rock with their boot, sniff the air like a hunting dog. Martine dismounts slowly, eyes never leaving the door. This is older than any church, they murmur. Older than the kingdoms. Maybe older than the language we're speaking. Be careful. Be respectful. You step forward. Each footfall feels heavy, deliberate. The oak's branches rustle overhead, though there is no wind. The leaves whisper against each other like voices just beyond hearing. The map in your hands trembles. You look down. The ink moves. The lines that led you here uncoil and sliver, running like dark water across the parchment. They converge on the symbol, the broken circle with the tree. For a moment it pulses, then lifts from the page like smoke and curls upward, hovering between you and the stone. You stare. The symbol, composed now of light instead of ink, rotates slowly in the air, shedding faint sparks. It smells faintly of burnt paper and rosemary. Your heart hammers against your ribs like it's trying to answer some invisible call. Touch it, Isabel breathes. Wait, Martine says sharply. We don't know, but you are already reaching out. Your fingers brush the edge of the glowing symbol. Heat flares up your arm, not burning, but intense, like plunging your hand into sun-warmed water. The warmth races up to your shoulder, across your collarbone, down into your chest. For a heartbeat, the world tilts. The basin, the oak, the mountains, your companions all blur into streaks of color. You hear a voice, not in your ears, but in the deep, quiet place behind your thoughts. It speaks no words you understand, yet you comprehend all the same. Ancient syllables roll through you like distant thunder. Images flicker behind your eyes, kings kneeling before the oak, their crowns laid at its roots. Rivers changing course with a gesture, mountains cracking open to reveal veins of glowing stone. You see a time when men bargained with the land itself, when they said, "We will respect your old places, your old powers. We will guard your doors and not use what lies behind them for war or greed." And the land, in the slow way of stone and root, answered, "I will feed you. I will shelter you. I will hold your bones when you are dust." Then, slowly, you see how that promise was forgotten. Not all at once, no great betrayal, no dramatic oath-breaking. Just neglect. A king too busy with his human enemies to send a pilgrim to the mountains that year. A drought that made people dam rivers they once let run wild. Fields pushed higher up slopes that used to be left for the goats and the eagles. Little choices, little cuts. The doors stayed closed. The keys were lost. The old places went quiet. But oaths do not die just because the people who swore them do. They linger in the stone. They echo in the rivers. They rustle in the oak's leaves and hum in the bones of the mountains. The vision fades. You are on your knees. The glowing symbol has vanished. The map in your hands is blank, old parchment, lines and marks gone like mist in the sun. On your chest, beneath your shirt, something burns, not with pain, but with presence. You fumble with your laces and pull the cloth aside. There, over your heart, where the traveler's map once rested, a mark glows faintly on your skin, a circle broken by a tree, its roots curling down, its branches reaching up. The same symbol, the same key, etched now into you. Ah, Isabel says faintly. That answers that. They glance at Martine. What exactly did you say this map was again? Trouble, Martine says hoarsely. I said it was trouble. Pernon reaches out with one thick finger and gently, reverently touches the mark on your chest. Their fingertip comes away glowing slightly for a heartbeat, then fades. Feels like stone, they murmur. Old stone, deep. The door hums. The branching lines around it flare brighter, blue-white light racing along them like lightning. The vertical seam widens by a hair's width. A breath of air spills out, cold, dry, smelling of dust and something else. Something like age, like the inside of a chest left sealed for generations. There is no scent of rot, no sourness, just the clean, austere smell of long-held stillness. The mountain's heartbeat grows louder. Under your feet, you feel the faintest tremor, as if something vast rolled over in its sleep deep below. This is the part in the story, Isabel says softly, where the hero is supposed to decide whether to open the door. And this is the part in real life, Martine adds, where we remember that stories do not speak of the generations that live with the choices made in moments like this. You stand. The mark over your heart throbs in time with the door's glow. You feel connected, as if a thread runs from your chest, through the stone, into the dark beyond, as if something is waiting, expectant, on the other side. What happens if we open it? You ask quietly. There is no single voice that answers. Instead, possibilities crowd your mind in flashes. You see floods, the rivers rising, washing away fields and villages, returning to courses that followed centuries ago. You see drought, the land drying, cracks opening like wounds in the earth as the mountains pull back their gifts. You see forests regrowing where fields stand now, wild animals reclaiming places where humans once ruled. You see nothing so dramatic or simple. You see a slow reweaving, a world where people remember the old places again, not as sources of power to exploit, but as neighbors to respect. Where once a year someone climbs this path to lay bread and wine in a whispered story at the oak's feet, not because they are commanded to by priest or king, but because they choose to keep faith with something older than both. Choice. That is what the land is offering. Not command, not demand, choice. You could turn away, seal the door with your silence, let the mark on your chest fade with time, walk back to San Candelario, take up your hammer at the forge, marry, perhaps, have children who climb the oak at the village gate and never see this hidden basin. The land would still be here. The door would still hum, faint and patient. The world would go on, a little more worn, a little more out of tune. War. You could place your hand on the stone and say, I hear you. I remember. I choose to renew the promise. You look at Martine, Isabel, Hernan. They each meet your gaze. I know what I would do, Hernan says, but it is not my mark on my chest. It is yours. I will stand beside you whatever you choose, Martine says simply. If we open it and the sky falls, I will hold a shield over your head. If we walk away, I will walk beside you back to your village and later drink your father under the table when he curses me for letting you go. Isabel smiles, small and fierce. I go where the songs go, they say. And this will be a song sung for 100 years. I would very much like to see how it ends. You turn back to the door. The oak's leaves rustle overhead. A sound like applause or like wind or like breath drawn in. Your hand is steady when you lay it against the stone. It is cold, not the biting cold of snow or ice, but the deep, patient chill of something that has not felt the sun in a long time. Under your palm, the glowing lines pulse. You speak. You do not know the old words, the language of kings and oaths that once rang in this hidden basin. So you use the words you do know, simple ones, honest ones. I am of San Candelario, you say, your voice echoing softly off the stone. My people work iron and earth. We sow and harvest. We mend and make. We are small, the mountains are large. But we would like to be friends. Again. Your throat tightens. I don't know what you want from us, you continue, or what we can give, but I know what we need. We need water that does not vanish when summer comes. We need soil that does not blow away in the wind. We need winters that are cold enough to kill the pests, but not so cold that kill our old. We need balance. You swallow. We will try to remember you, not just in fear, but in respect. We will come when we can. We will tell your stories. We will teach our children that these mountains are not just stone to be broken, but neighbors. If you will still have us. For a long moment, nothing happens. Then the mountain exhales. It feels like a wind, but there is no movement of air. It is a shifting pressure, a release of something coiled. The throbbing under your feet eases. The glowing lines around the door flare brilliant, then fade to a soft, steady sheen. The seam widens. Darkness yawns. It is not the darkness of something hungry or hateful. It is simply absence. The inside of a sealed room, the closed eye of a sleeping giant. And within that darkness, something moves. Not a shape, not a creature, more like a presence. It rolls forward slowly, like a wave. It touches your outstretched hand. Warmth floods your arm. Not the heat of fire, but the warmth of sun-warmed earth under bare feet. The comfort of a stone bench that has held generations of bodies. The rich, loamy smell of soil turned by a plow at spring planting. The tang of clean, cold water from a mountain spring. The dry crackle of pine needles underfoot. The sticky sweetness of resin on your fingers. Images flicker through your mind. Your village fields greener than you have ever seen them. Wheat heads heavy. Vines sagging with grapes. The well in the plaza running clear, even in the driest month. Children splashing in the river under the oak trees, their laughter ringing off the banks. Goats grazing higher on the slopes without fear of rock slides. Snow on the peaks, neat and measured, melting slowly in spring to feed streams that never run dry. Balance. Not perfection, not luxury, just enough. Enough rain. Enough sun. Enough time between floods and droughts for people to mend their roofs, replant their seeds, bury their dead, and tell their stories. In return, you sense, the land asks for little. Memory. A cup of wine poured on the threshold of the oak once a year. Bread left on a stone. Names spoken where once they were silenced. A promise that when some future king drunk on visions of power comes again chasing the idea of this door, someone will be there to say, we remember why it was closed, and why it should open only this much. You nod, though you do not know if the presence can see the gesture. Yes, you whisper, we can do that. I will do that. I will teach them. The warmth lingers, then slowly withdraws. The darkness behind the door settles. The seam narrows again, stopping wider than it was, but not fully open. The glowing lines etch themselves permanently into the stone, bright even in the sunlight. Above, the oak's leaves shimmer, greener than before. A breeze lifts your hair. This one is real cool, carrying the scent of distant rain and something else. Something like gratitude. On your chest, the mark of the key cools. When you look down, it is no longer glowing, but its shape is clear and sharp on your skin, as if it has always been there. The mountain's heartbeat continues, but it is slower now. Steady, content. The Zebel lets out the breath they've been holding in a whoosh. Well, they say, that was brisk. They blink rapidly. Do you know how hard it will be to find rhymes for geological covenant? Bernan clears their throat gruffly and wipes at one eye with the back of their wrist, leaving a dusty streak. You did well, they say, for a blacksmith's child stumbling into old magic. Martine's smile is small but bright with something like pride. You made a promise for more than just yourself, they say. Not everyone would have. Many would have asked for gold, or power, or revenge. They look up at the oak, then at the cliffs. If more oaths were like the one you just spoke, we would need fewer swords. You feel light. Tired, yes, bone tired, soul tired. Your knees feel wobbly, your head buzzes, your stomach reminds you that you last ate properly hours ago. But beneath all that, there is a sense of rightness, like a bone set straight after being knocked out of place. You did not wake a monster. You did not doom your village. You did not fix the world. You did something smaller and perhaps more important. You reminded a very old place that it is not forgotten. You offered respect instead of fear, partnership instead of plunder. You renewed a promise made by kings with the plain words of a blacksmith's child. The land accepted. The consequences will not all be simple or easy. Some years there will still be hail in spring. Some winters will still bite. People will still be selfish and kind and foolish and brave and uneven measure. But somewhere under it all, a mountain now remembers the sound of your voice. You eat at the foot of the oak that evening, sharing bread and sausage and cheese with your companions. You pour a cup of watered wine at the tree's roots and watch it soak into the stone, leaving a damp stain that seems to shimmer faintly before fading. The sky above the basin turns from blue to gold to rose to deep violet. Stars prick into existence one by one. The air cools, smelling of night and stone and leaf. Somewhere in the cliffs, an owl calls, low and mournful. Isabel plays softly, a tune you've never heard before. It is simple and haunting, full of space and echoes, as if written for the mountains. Hernan leans back against a root, eyes half closed. Martine sits cross-legged, stripping and oiling their sword with careful hands. You lie on your back, staring up at the oval of sky, your hands folded over the mark on your chest. Tomorrow you will have to decide. Do you go back to San Candelario now, bearing this strange news, this invisible gift? Do you settle into the rhythms of the forge again, with this secret humming quietly under your ribs? Do you become the one who remembers when others forget, climbing this path once a year with bread and wine and a story? Or do you go on with Martine, Isabel, and Hernan, following other old marks on other maps, waking other sleeping packs, mending the world one small oath at a time? The choice sits before you like another door. For now, you let it be. You listen to the music, to the owl, to the soft breathing of your companions, to the whisper of the oak's leaves. Sleep comes easily, like a friend. You wake to the smell of rain, not the harsh metallic tang of a storm about to break, but the gentle scent of showers passing over distant hills. The air in the basin is cool and fresh. Dew beads along the oak's leaves and on your eyelashes. The stone under your back is hard, but your muscles feel looser than they did the night before. You sit up. Isabel is already awake, plucking at their lute strings. Hernan pokes at the embers of last night's fire, coaxing a flame from stubborn coals. Martine stands at the basin's edge, hands on hips, looking out over the mountains beyond. You join them. Below in the valleys, you see something strange. The usual morning mist lies in the low places, thick and pearly. But here and there, where you know there should be dry gullies and cracked earth, you see glints of silver, rivulets, new springs, water that has found old paths again. Looks like the land was listening, Hernan says, coming up beside you, blowing on a piece of bread they've crisped over the fire. The smell of it, smoke, wheat, a hint of char, twists your stomach in pleasant knots. You take the bread when they offer it. It is warm and crunchy, the inside still soft. You eat, watching the light shift over the slopes. Martine nudges you gently with their elbow. So, they ask, home or onward? You look down at San Candelario's distant direction. You picture your father's face when you tell him what you have done. You imagine his anger, his fear. Then, perhaps, his grudging pride. You see yourself standing in the village square in years to come, telling children about the oak in the hidden basin and the door that hums softly behind it. You see those children one day making the climb themselves. You look at Martine, at their worn armor and scarred hands, at Isabel, eyes bright with the itch for new songs, at Hernan, solid and steady as the mountains themselves, hammer resting easily against their shoulder. You feel the key mark on your chest warm, just a little. Maybe the world does not have to choose. I'll come back, you say slowly. Soon. I have promises to keep now, but I think. You draw in a deep breath of pine and stone and distant rain. I think there are more doors like this, more oaths half forgotten, more places that need someone to listen and speak. Isabel's grin could light a valley. I knew you were sensible, they say. Sensible? Hernan snorts. We are about to walk willingly into more trouble. That is the opposite of sensible. Martine smiles. That is the beginning of a very long story, they say. And for what it's worth, I am glad you stepped out your door when you did. You shoulder your satchel. You take one last look at the oak, at the vein-lit door, at the basin that now feels strangely like a second home you've only just discovered. Keep an eye on our fields, you murmur under your breath, not sure if you're speaking to the tree or the mountain or the idea of both. We'll keep an eye on yours, the leaves whisper in answer. You follow Martine out of the basin, through the pass, back toward the broader mountains and whatever waits beyond their next ridge. Isabel starts a new song as you go, words tumbling out half-formed. In a little town beneath the stone where hammers sang and wheat was sown, a child of ash and iron's glow felt the mountain's call below. The tune floats on the air, mingling with the smell of sun-warmed rock, of rosemary crushed under boots, of a world just a little more imbalanced than it was yesterday. You smile. The road curves, hiding the basin from view. Ahead of you, the mountains open their arms. You step forward, the mark of the key warm against your heart, your friends at your side, the promise of more stories in your future. And somewhere far below, in a village waking to fields that glisten with new dew, a blacksmith looks up at the mountains, feels a strange, deep ease in his bones, and without quite knowing why, smiles too. Your adventure is only beginning. But for tonight, under these stars, with these friends, with this door quietly humming closed behind you, and the world breathing a little easier, you can sleep, you are safe, you are loved, and the mountains are listening. Chapter 2. The Pass of the Hermandad. You are 3 days from the hidden basin when the world reminds you it does not need monsters to be dangerous. Morning comes thin and cold over the Sierra, the light clear as water poured over stone. Frost rims the tufts of grass at your feet, your breath smokes in the air. The sky is that hard blue that seems to ring when you look at it too long, empty of clouds, empty of omens. You walk a mule track pressed into the mountain's flank, little more than a widened goat path. On one side the slope rises steeply, studded with scrub pines and gray woolgoose. On the other, it falls away sharply toward a narrow valley where a stream flashes in the distance like a silver thread. The land smells of cold rock and thyme crushed under hooves. Somewhere out of sight, sheep bells tinkle faintly, a scattered music drifting from a distant flock. The air tastes metallic, like the edge of a coin between your teeth. Isabel walks just ahead of you, cloak tight around their shoulders, lute wrapped in oiled cloth against the frost. They hum a snatch of some tune about a miller's daughter and priest that Martine would disapprove of. Hernan brings up the rear, their hammer resting easy across one shoulder, whistling tunelessly. Martine leads, as always, one hand on the mare's rein, eyes scanning the slope and sky with a soldier's habit. The mark over your heart has become almost ordinary, a low, steady warmth beneath your shirt. Most days you can forget it for hours at a time, like a scar that only itches when the weather changes. Then the wind shifts, or the mountains catch the light in a particular way, and you feel it pulse, a small reminder the pact in the basin was not a dream. You promised, there, with your hand on that cool stone door and the oak's shadow around you, that you would not look away when the land itself strained under old wounds. You are not yet sure what that means. Today it means walking. Tell me again why we did not turn our faces back toward San Candelario the moment we left that cursed basin. Isabel calls over their shoulder, boots crunching on frost-hardened mud. We could be singing this story by a warm tavern fire by now, you know. I could have exaggerated at leisure. Because we have a letter, Martine replies, and I gave my word it would reach Avila. Bishops grow testy when their letters wander off into songs instead of cathedrals. And because, Hernan adds, our friend here, they jerk their chin toward you, decided that if the mountains themselves started speaking, someone had better listen for a while. Ah, you sabble, sighs. You smile despite the chill, their familiar bickering a small fire of its own. You have almost convinced your fingers to feel again when a smell reaches you on the wind. It comes thin at first, a faint bitter edge under the clean, cold smoke. Not the distant, comforting breath of village hearths. Raw, closer, touched with something else, burnt wool. Martine's head turns slightly. You see their shoulders stiffen under their cloak. Do you smell that? They ask quietly. You nod. Isabel falls silent. Could be shepherds burning brush, Hernan says, but they do not sound convinced. Not in this cold, Martine murmurs, and not so high. Stay close. The path bends, hugging the mountain shoulder more tightly, before widening into a kind of shelf, an open space carved by centuries of hooves and cartwheels. Ruts fissure the frozen mud. Old dung cakes the edges, broken and scattered. A natural halt on the road between valleys, a place to rest animals, repair harness, haggle over loads. Today, something else has happened here. You see it as you round the last curve. A cart lies canted in the middle of the shelf, one wheel half off, its bed tilted. Another lies farther on its side, its traces cut. Barrels and bales are scattered like spilled dice. One crate has burst apart, copper pots and plates rolling free, dented and muddied. A bale of wool still smolders at one corner, threads charred and black, sending up greasy, bitter smoke. Two shapes lie in the dirt near the nearer cart. A man face down, arms splayed, tunic dark around the shoulders. A mule on its side, harness tangled, its eye a dull, astonished marble. Flies already cluster at the nostrils despite the cold. Your stomach knots. You have seen animals slaughtered in the village. Pigs and sheep hung and bled with practiced care. This is different. There is no order here, no purpose beyond violence. Martine swings down from the mare in one smooth motion. Wait here. They say, voice flat. You ignore them and follow anyway. The man is older than you, with a graying beard stiff with blood. His cloak is thick but cheap, the kind a small trader might wear. An iron cross hangs around his neck on a leather thong. He lies half under the cart, one hand still clutching at a torn leather purse. An empty knife scabbard hangs at his belt. Martine kneels beside him, fingers pressing lightly at the neck out of habit. Then they sigh. Crossbow, they murmur, pointing. You see it now, a quarrel buried in the man's back between the shoulder blades, feathers darkened. The wound is small, almost neat, but the blood that is soaked into the wool tells the rest. Usabel has come up beside you, one hand pressed to their mouth. Bandits, they whisper. Bandoleros, more likely, Hernan says grimly. This is the old road between Bejar and Avila. Plenty of lonely places. Plenty of hungry men since the last war ended and the crown stopped paying soldiers on time. You have heard the tales in San Candelario of riders with wrapped faces and quick hands, of caravans stripped to the boards, of disappearances. You are now standing in someone else's bad story. Martine's eyes travel over the scene with a practiced, professional detachment that makes something in your chest tighten. See here, they say quietly, gesturing with a gloved hand. 2 carts, not one. That second one, they nod toward the overturned cart farther along the shelf. Its wheel was taken clean off, not broken. Whoever did this knew what they wanted and what they could carry. Look, they point to a trail of flattened grass and muddy footprints leading off the shelf and up toward a small stand of scrubben rocks above. You follow the line with your gaze. It disappears quickly into the uneven hillside, but you understand what Martine means. The bandits took what they could and left quickly, driving animals and stolen goods upslope where carts cannot follow. You look back at the dead man. Is there anyone else? You ask. Let's see. You fan out across the shelf, careful where you put your boots. Another man lies near the second cart, this one younger, his head at an angle that makes your neck ache just to look at it. A broken club lies near his fingers. He wears no cross, but there is a worn string around his wrist with a crude pewter charm of St. James. A pilgrim, perhaps, walking in the wrong place at the wrong time, hoping for a ride. You find a woman, too, in the shelter of a rock, slumped as if asleep. Her dress is good wool, her apron stained. Her hair is braided in the style of the plains, not the Sierra. There is a cut at her throat, shallow, but in the wrong place. Her hands are empty, palms scraped and dirty. By the time you return to the first cart, your jaws clench so tight it aches. 4, you say. 2 men, a woman. I didn't see any children. Small mercy, Hernan mutters. Isabel's face has gone pale under the smudges of road dust. We can't just leave them like this, they say. No, Martine agrees. You spend the next little while doing the small, stubborn things the living can still do for the dead. You close eyes, straighten limbs. You lay the man with the cross next to the woman and the younger man, on a patch of bare earth out of the track of hooves. You cannot dig graves in its ground. It is too rocky, the frost too hard. But you pile stones over them, hands numbed, breath puffing in short clouds, until at least the crows and wolves will have to work harder. Usaba murmurs snatches of a prayer as they stack rocks, half-remembered Latin braided with whatever fragments of blessing they carry from 100 chapels and roadside shrines. Hernan moves in slow, methodical silence. Martine signs the cross over the mound when you finish, their lips moving without sound. You step back, flexing your cold fingers. It is not enough. It is all you can do. The smell of burnt wool hangs stubbornly in the air. What now, you ask? Martine squints toward the hillside where the tranquil path disappears. I would like to say we walk away, they admit. That we leave this to the Santa Hermandad. That is their work, hunting men like these. The Hermandad, you echo? The Holy Brotherhood, Usable supplies, voice still thin. Royal officers. They ride in pairs and threes, with iron badges bearing the king's arms and the words, Por la Hermandad. They're supposed to keep the roads safe. They also hang men from trees without a trial when they're in a hurry. You picture what would happen if they came upon you among these bodies, your hands still dusty with dirt from the cairn. They might not wait to hear us out, you say. Another reason to move on quickly, Hernan mutters. Martine's jaw works. These people were under the king's peace, they say eventually, nodding at the stones. On the road, carrying goods, wearing crosses and saints. They were slaughtered for their cargo and the purses on their belts. If we walk away, whoever did this will do it again at the next pass. They look at you, then at the mark they cannot see but somehow always remember. You said, back in the basin, that if the land hurt, you could not pretend you hadn't heard. Their tone is not accusing, just testing. You glance at the hillside, at the rough scrub and scattered rocks hiding whatever men did this. You feel no thrum of magic in the air, No oak's whisper, just the ordinary chill of morning, the ache of tired muscles, the sour taste of anger at the back of your tongue. But the land here has its own hurt. You can see it in the wheel ruts, in the dead eyes of the mule, in the blood soaking into the dried mud. If we go after them, you say slowly, what then? We are at the Hermandad. We have no royal seal, no right to hang anyone. We're 4 people, Hernan says, against who knows how many. We'd be fools to march straight up and demand repentance. You, Isabel snorts faintly, you'd try it. They mean you. They are not wrong. We could follow, Martine says, ignoring the jibe. See where they've taken their spoils. How many they are. Perhaps find a way to warn the next travelers before anyone else dies. At the very least, we'll know which paths to avoid. They look beyond you, down the road in the direction you were headed. The track dips toward a saddle between peaks, then vanishes. Somewhere beyond that, Avila waits with its high tooth-like walls, its bishop, its letter. We lose a day, Martine says. Perhaps 2. A day against more deaths, Hernan replies. You don't have to convince me. The glance toward you. You feel the decision settle on your shoulders like another cloak. You think of your father, of his irritation at bandits more as a story than as a threat. The road is dangerous, he would say. That is why we stay where the forge is. You think of all the times you stood at the village gate and watched strangers pass, their lives a line you could not see beyond the next bend. You wanted then to know what lay past the bend. You did not think it would be this. Let's see where they've gone, say. If we cannot stop them, at least we can know. Martine's mouth tightens, but there is approval in their eyes. Very well, they say. Isabel, stay with the carts and the animals. If riders come, Hermandad or bandits, you shout loud enough to wake St. James. Don't play hero. Me? Isabel presses a hand to their chest. Never. You too, Martine continues, nodding at you and Hernan. With me. We stay low. We do not shout unless we need to start a fight. And if I say run, we run, Hernan finishes. I know that word in every language. You grin despite yourself. The path up the hillside is less a trail than a suggestion. You follow the pressed-down grass and scuffed earth where men and animals passed in haste. The ground is uneven, studded with rocks that shift under your boots. Low thorn bushes snag at your cloak. The air grows thinner, the wind sharper, carrying a faint tang of wood smoke that is not from the smoldering wool behind you. Your breath grows louder in your own ears. The tracks lead you up and around the shoulder of the mountain to where a shallow hollow opens, a natural bowl in the hillside, invisible from the road below. A few stunted pines huddle at its rim. In the middle stands a low structure of dry-laid stone, more like an oversized shepherd's hut than a house, a ruin of old field walls perhaps repurposed. Smoke coils from a hole in its roof. You drop instinctively, flattening yourself against a rock. Martine has already melted into a patch of scrub. A man crouches behind a boulder, their hammer held close, not raised. You inch forward until you can see more. There are 6 of them. Men, maybe late teens to middle years, in patched cloaks and mismatched bits of armor. A shoulder plate here, an old leather cuirass there. 2 have swords that might once have hung from a soldier's belt. Another leans on a pike with a chipped head. One has a short crossbow resting across his knees, the bowstring loose for now. Their faces are like any faces you might see in a village or a town street. Tired, hollowed a bit by hard winters. One has a scar along the jaw. Another wears his hair in a short Moorish cut, despite the Christian badge sewn to his sleeve. They laugh, cough, curse, argue. 2 mules stand picketed nearby, heavily loaded with sacks and bales you recognize from the road. One of the men is cutting open a cloth bundle, tossing hard cheese to his companions. Another raises a wineskin and drinks deeply, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. That's it, Hernan whispers very softly, their breath tickling your ear. 6? 6 that we see, Martine murmurs back from your other side. There may be others in the hut. We're out on watch. You study the hollow. The camp is not well guarded. The men move like people who believe they have already won. Their weapons lie close to hand, but none stands on the rim scanning for danger. They do not expect trouble from above. Could we take them? Hernan breathes. The 3 of us? With luck, Martine says, and the wind behind us. But that is not why we came. We do not know if they have prisoners, and we are not here to play at wars long since ended. You look at the camp again. There's a 7th figure after all, you realize, as the door of the hut creaks open. A young man, no more than your age, perhaps less, staggers out blinking. His hair is a tangle, his face pale. His hands are tied in front of him, thick rope chafing his wrists. A bloody scrape mars one cheek. He wears the coarse brown habit of a lay brother, a wooden rosary at his waist. One of the older bandits, the one with the scar along his jaw, grabs the youth by the back of his robe and shoves him down near the fire. You'll sit there, quote, the man says, quiet as a mouse. Try to run, and Rodrigo will put a bolt in your leg. He nods toward the man with the crossbow. We said we'd deliver you breathing. We didn't say anything about walking. The youth's eyes flare wide. I have done nothing, he protests hoarsely. In God's name, if you've done nothing, the scarred man snaps, tell it to the nobleman who wants to see your face. Maybe he'll change his mind and send you back to your monastery with a sack of olives for the road. It's none of our business. He turns away, already finished with the boy, and tears into a strip of bread. You trade a quick glance with Martine. A kidnapped monk, or near enough. Bandits delivering him like cargo. The air around you seems colder suddenly. For ransom, you whisper? Or for questions they don't want asked in public, Martine replies, lips barely moving. In these mountains, a handful of men can live well for a year on one nobleman's coin, or be hanged for taking it from the wrong purse. They watch a moment longer. Whatever this is, Martine murmurs, it is uglier than a simple robbery. You swallow. Do we leave him? You ask, though you already know the answer. Hernan makes a faint, offended sound. We've taken on the wrath of bishops and landlords before, they mutter. What's a few hungry thieves and some rich man's bad temper? Martine's eyes stay on the crossbow. One quarrel in the wrong place ends this very quickly, they says. We cannot rush them head on. We need a shift, noise, confusion, something to make them look the wrong way for a heartbeat. You think of the slope, the loose stones, the hut's flimsy walls, and of you settled down by the road with their loud, stubborn tongue. An idea, half ridiculous, takes shape in your mind. You said the Hermandad sometimes rides this way, you murmur. Do these men fear them? Like devils fear holy water, Hernan says. You nod slowly. Then we don't need 6 more swords, you whisper. We just need these 6 to think the Hermandad has arrived. Martine frowns. Fake royal officers? They ask. That's a noose around the neck if anyone decides to take a closer look. Only for a moment, you say. Long enough to pull the boy out and scatter their wits. After that, we can be humble travelers who happened on trouble and rush to help. Hernan's eyes begin to sparkle. You want Isabel to frighten them to death, they guess. Not to death, you say. Just to the edge. You think they can shout like a troop of riders? Martine asks skeptically. You've heard them in a tavern. Hernan counters under their breath. You smile despite your tight chest. Give me a few minutes to get back down there, you say. I tell Isabel to take Remedios and the mare up the track a little, out of sight. Then you gesture, riders appearing on the shelf, cloaks snapping, voices raised. If the bandits think the Hermandad is on the road, they'll be looking down, not up, you finish. We grab the boy, cut his bonds, and run while they're deciding whether to flee or fight. Martine hesitates. It's mad, they say. Of course it is, Hernan replies. But look at them. They're lazy enough to fall for it. Martine exhales slowly, a thin plume of white. All right, they say. We try it. But listen to me. Their gaze pins you. If they don't run, If they shoot instead, you do not play hero. You get down. You stay behind stone. I've seen too many brave idiots fall because they thought justice made them arrow-proof. You nod, throat dry. I'll be careful, you lie. Martine does not believe you, but they nod anyway. You slide back along the rocks on your belly, fingers numb, heart thudding with more than effort. The hillside falls away beneath you, the shelf with the carts growing visible again between scrub. Uzable is a bright speck moving among the wreckage, their cloak flapping. When you reach them, your breath is coming fast. Well, Uzable demands immediately. How many? Do they have 7 heads each? Are we running, fighting, or composing a lament? 6 men, you say, keeping your voice low. 1 crossbow I saw, swords. They've a camp just over that rise. You jerk your chin toward the hollow. We think they took what they wanted and, you lower your voice further, they have a prisoner. A young lay brother, judging by his habit. Scarred, one mentioned delivering him to some nobleman. Yasabel's eyes blaze. Of course they do, they say. Never do a simple robbery when you can mix in a bit of kidnapping for variety. We can't fight 6 men with 1 crossbow from the open road, you say. But Martine thinks they'll bolt if they hear the Hermandad. Isabel's expression shifts as quickly as a cloud shadow. Oh, they breathe. Oh, you want a little theater. I want noise, you say. Horseshoes on stone, shouts, threats of hanging, enough to make men who've just robbed a royal road wonder if they should be somewhere else. Usabo actually laughs, a quick, bright sound that makes the cold scene thinner. I've been training my whole life for this, they say. Henan, the stonebreaker has come down behind you, leading Remedios and Martine's mare. I can bang pots, they offer, and do a passable impression of an angry priest. Perfect, Isabel says. They move quickly. You lead the 2 animals a little way along the road, around a bend where hooves on rock will echo. Hernan unties a dented pot from one of the carts, loops a leather strap through its handle, and slings it from the mule's pack so it will clang with each step. Yasabel wraps their cloak tighter and drags out from their saddlebags a small scrap of metal, round, polished, engraved. A badge. You squint at it. Is that an old troop prop? Yasabel says breezily. We did a play once in Segovia where we all pretended to be the king's men. The real Hermandad did not find it as funny as the audience did. I kept the badge. Never thought it would be useful. It is not an exact copy, of course. The Lion of Castile is more suggestion than heraldry. But from a distance, in the right light, stay down, you tell them again, even as you hand them Martine's spare cloak. Wave this so they see something that looks official. Bossy, Isabel says, but they accept the cloak. You get back up that hill. When you hear me shout, be ready. You scramble back up, lungs protesting, hands numb. The hollow with the bandit camp comes into view once more. Men still seated, still careless. The lay brother sits hunched, eyes on the fire, lips moving silently. Praying, you think. Martine's gaze flicks to you as you belly back into place. Well, they whisper. They're ready, you say. If anyone can make 6 men think a dozen riders are coming, it's Isabel. You have a strange kind of faith, Martine mutters. On my mark, then, we go for the boy. Hernan, you cut the ropes. If anyone turns our way, I stop them. And me, you ask? Stay between us, Martine says. You're too valuable to hang on a tree for this valley's sins. You open your mouth to protest. A sound from below cuts you off. At first, it could be anything. A clatter, a distant shout. Then it swells. Hooves strike stone in a sharp, ringing rhythm. The pot Hernan hung from Remedios' pack bangs in rough countertime. Clang, clang, clang. Isabel's voice rises over it, loud, carrying, pitched in that trained way that cuts through tavern din and market brawl. By order of His Majesty King Fernando and Queen Isabel, they bellow in perfect imitation of a self-important officer. In the name of the Santa Hermandad, stand where you are and drop your weapons. Any man seen fleeing this place will hang from the nearest pine. Rodrigo, take the left flank. Juan, the right. Bows ready. You cannot see Isabel from here. You do not need to. The effect in the hollow is immediate. The man with the crossbow, who has probably been called Rodrigo all his life, jolts to his feet, eyes wide, hands scrambling for the weapon's string. The scarred leader swears viciously, scanning the rim of the hollow. Damn it all, he spits. They're early. Manuel, get the bags. Luis, untie the mules. You, he points at the youngest of the bandits, inside. Take the boy with you. If anyone comes to that door who isn't us, you stick a knife in him and run. The youth, paling even further, scrambles to obey, yanking the lay brother to his feet. Now, Martine breathes. You move. The three of you slip around the hollow's rim opposite the direction the bandits are looking, boots silent on the thin soil. Shouts from below continue, Isabel cursing inventively, Hernan answering in a different voice, deep and booming. Hooves clatter. The pot clangs. It sounds, if you didn't know better, like a small troop trying to surround a camp. The bandits bunch toward the side nearest the road, grabbing at sacks, weapons, anything they can carry. Two start up the slope in that direction, peering anxiously between rocks. None of them are looking behind. The youth with the knife and the lay brother vanish into the hut. Martine's hand touches your arm. They point. There is a low spot in the rim where the wall of the hut butts up against the hillside, leaving a strip of roof you can reach with a jump and scramble. From there, a small smoke hole punctures the ceiling. You nod, heart thudding. Hernan goes first, hauling themselves up with an ease born from climbing quarry faces. You follow, fingers scraping stone, boots slipping once on frost before you gain the low roof. Martine comes behind, lighter than either of you despite their mail. The smoke hole gapes dark, edged with black from countless small fires. You crawl to it and peer down. Inside, the hut is dim. Smoke blows the air. A low fire burns in a stone circle at the center, a blackened iron pot simmering above it. Against the back wall lies a heap of sacks and crates. By the door, the young bandit stands with his knife in a white-knuckled grip, breathing hard. The lay brother kneels near him, hands still bound, head bowed. He looks shaken but whole. You exhale a breath you didn't know you were holding. Martine leans close. Tap his wrist, they whisper. Hard. Make him drop the knife. Hernan goes through the door, you through the hole. I'll cover if anyone looks back. You nod, palms sweating. You ease your hand over the smoke hole, fingers seeking. You wait for the youth's hand to pass under. Once. Twice. The third time, you strike. Your knuckles crash down on his wrist with a satisfying thud. The knife clatters to the packed dirt floor. The young bandit yelps, clutching his hand. Before he can shout properly, the door bursts inward. Hernan fills the doorway like an avalanche, ducking under the lintel by instinct. Their hammer gleams in the half-light. Down, they roar, in the same tone they might use on a fractious mule. The young bandit goes down more from shock than obedience, one hand still nursing his wrist, eyes bulging. The lay brother jerks, then freezes. You drop through the hole a heartbeat later, landing in a crouch beside the fire. Smoke stings your eyes. The air smells of stew, damp wool, sweat. It's all right, you gasp, more to convince yourself than anyone else. We're not... Quiet, Martine hisses from the roof, where only you can hear. They are right. Noise is still your ally, but only the right kind. Hernan's hammer hovers in the air, not quite touching the young man's face. Shout, they growl. Shout and your teeth rattle with the next swing. Understand? The youth stares at them, chest heaving. Then he slowly nods. Good, Hernan says pleasantly. You've more sense than your friends. You drop to your knees beside the lay brother. His eyes are wide, pupils huge in the dimness. Up close you can see the smudge of soot on his cheek, the chafing around his bound wrists, the small holy metal at his throat. We're not with them, you say quietly. Can you stand? He nods once, jerky. You draw your knife and saw at the ropes around his wrists, sawing clumsily in your haste. The fibers bite into your fingers. At last they part. On your feet, Hernan says to both of them, slowly, hands where I can see them. We're going out. If anyone tries to stop us, you dive for the ground and pray faster. Outside, the hollow is chaos. Ysabo's racket has done its work too well. 3 of the bandits have scrambled to the rim nearest the road, peering downward, weapons out. One actually fires his crossbow toward the sound, the quarrel soaring harmlessly into empty air. Another shouts, "We surrender! In God's name, we surrender!" before being cuffed by the scarred leader. "Idiot!" the older man snaps. "Do you see badges? You see no badges! You don't surrender! Grab what you can! We go over the ridge cut down to the stream." His words cut off as he finally turns and sees Hernan emerging from the hut's door with a hammer and 2 figures at their back. For a frozen instant, everyone stares at everyone. Then Martin vaults down from the roof behind you, landing lightly despite their armor, sword bare. "Leave them," they shout, voice carrying. "Take your feet and go. Try to touch them and I carve your name into your ribs." It is not a negotiation. It is an order, cast into the space between you all like a thrown spear. The scarred man's eyes flick from Martin's face to the lay brother's habit, to Hernan's hammer, to the rim of the hollow where invisible riders supposedly wait just out of sight. He calculates. You can almost see the numbers. A kidnapped monk, a few loads of wool, some copper pots. The risk of the Hermandad actually riding over that rise and finding him here with his hands full of stolen goods. Not worth a broken neck. He spits into the dirt. "Take your holy chicken," he snarls. "We've no quarrel with God's servants. Our quarrel is with lords who forget to pay their debts. One of those lords will hang you," Martin says evenly, "if you cross his half on the wrong road." "Let him try," the man growls. "Until then, we eat." He gestures sharply to his men. "Drop the sacks," he barks. "Grab the coin and light stuff. We're gone." There is a flurry of motion. 2 men abandon bundles already half-tied, snatching up only small bags, coin purses, and whatever jewelry they have already taken. One grabs the wineskin. Another, cursing, kicks dirt over the fire to smother it. Within moments, they are heaving themselves up over the far side of the hollow, scrambling toward a notch in the ridge that you had not seen before. They move like men who know these trails, disappearing quickly among rocks and scrub. The scarred man is the last to leave. He pauses at the rim and looks back at you, eyes narrow. "You're fools," he says, "interfering in business that's none of yours." You feel your jaw tighten. "Robbing and killing on the king's road is everyone's business," you say. He snorts. "The king has his hermandades and his taxmen," he says. "You think he cares about a rule merchant from Piedrahita?" He jerks his head toward the shelf you left behind. "The only reason he remembers our names is when he needs bodies to throw against Moorish walls. Remember that when you go bow in Avila." There is too much truth in his bitterness. It lands like a stone in your gut. Before you can find an answer, he is gone, vanishing over the ridge with his men. The hollow feels suddenly much bigger. Silence pools in their wake, broken only by Isabel's continued shouting, now drifting around the slope as they realize no one is riding out to meet them. You sag a little. Martin exhales slowly, shoulders losing an inch of their tension. "Are you hurt?" they ask the lay brother. The youth shakes his head, swallowing. I think not." His voice is rough, his Castilian thick with a northern accent. "Bumps, bruises. I thought—" He cuts himself off, eyes filling briefly. Then he clamps his jaw. "Thank you. Who are you?" you ask gently. "Miguel," he says. "A lay brother from the monastery of Nostra Senora del Risco. We keep a small shrine on the cliff above the Tormes. Or did." His face tightens. "A messenger came from a lord near Avila. Said our prior must answer charges of heresy." "Me? Heresy?" He lets out a strangled little laugh. "I copy books. I feed chickens. I fell asleep once during matins. That is the measure of my crimes." Hernan shifts his weight, and the bandits, they prod. On the road, Miguel says, just below the pass, men with wrapped faces stopped our mule. They showed me a ring with the Lord's seal, said they had been sent to escort me to his castle, to answer questions first. The prior argued, They struck him. He looks away. I went with them. I thought if I obeyed, no one else would be hurt. Then I saw those carts. His throat works. You think of the dead, of the stones you piled. The words charge of heresy sit ill in your stomach. You have heard of such things in distant towns, of Jews and conversos hauled before priests, of Moors pressured to convert, of friars preaching against old customs. In San Candelario, such tales felt far away, like thunder beyond the next ridge. Here, they have the shape of a young man with rope burns on his wrists. Why would a lord accuse a little shrine of heresy? Isabel asks from the slope above as they arrive, cheeks flushed, panting from effort in their own echoes. Did you put too much garlic in the lentils? Miguel gives them a worn look. We have old books, he says simply, ones saved in bad years, some from before the last kings, illy copied from Arabic even, stories, accounts, a map or two. Perhaps someone told him we read too much, or that we did not burn the parchment when a certain preacher said we should. Old books can make powerful men nervous, Martin murmurs. They know this too well. His abbot mutters a curse in a language you do not recognize. Come, Hernan says briskly. We can't fix the quarrel between lords and shrines on this hillside, but we can get you out of reach of those clowns for the day. Can you ride? Miguel looks ruefully at his own feet, at the thin sandals. Badly, he admits. But I will learn quickly. Good, Hernan says. You'll share a saddle with me. I have dropped heavier burdens. And you can't see me and me. I thought you would like the saddle with me. On the way down to the road, the lay brother leans on your arm more than once when the slope crumbles underfoot. His fingers are cold but strong. You pass again the cairn of stones you built. Who were they? Miguel whispers. Traitors, you say softly. Pilgrim, woman. We do not know their names. Miguel pauses. He presses his hand to the stones, lips moving in prayer too low to hear, then straightens. I will remember them, he says, when I say Mass again, if I ever do. If. The small word hangs between you. Down on the road, Jezebel shows off their dented pot and their improvised badge with pride. It worked, they say. They jumped like cats in a rain barrel. You should have seen your faces. But of course you did not. You were up there with real danger. Martine's mouth quirks despite everything. Your voice may be the death of us one day, they say. But today it saved at least one life. Yesabel gives a sprawling bow. I shall inscribe that in my epitaph, they declare. Here lies Jezebel, whose tongue killed as many as their songs saved. You redistribute the cart's loads as best you can. There is more here than you can take. Bales of wool, barrels too heavy for one mule. You gather coin purses where they had been dropped, tuck them safely away. Perhaps, farther along the road, in some village with an alcalde who has more honesty than greed, you can see them used for masses and bread. The dead's mule, kneeling now after the fright and the stink of blood, lets you take its halter with only a little coaxing. Its ears flick anxiously, but it follows when you click your tongue. 2 carts are beyond us, Hernan says. But we can at least see some of this cloth sold in a town that isn't full of men with crossbows. Bejar is nearer than Avila, Martin muses. We could turn back. Take Miguel there. Let the monks and the alcalde sort it out. Miguel stiffens. Please, he says. If they can drag me from my monastery once, they can do it again. The Lord's men will know where to look. If I'm to be questioned, let it be in a place where there are witnesses and walls the king cares about. Avila is better for that than Bejar. And someone must tell the bishop what is being done in his name. He looks at you, as if you could decide such things. Your feet are sore. Your shoulders ache. You smell of smoke and fear and mule sweat. Part of you wants, desperately, to turn back toward the familiar valleys, to let kings and bishops and hermandades brawl over their scraps without you. The mark over your heart pulses, very faintly. You remember, unbidden, the cool stone of the basin door under your hand. The sense, however foolish, that the land itself had taken note of you. The bandits' leader was not wrong. Kings do not often care about merchants' blood. But someone should. Avila, then, you say quietly. We keep our first promise and carry this one with it. Martin studies you for a moment. Then they nod. So it is, they say. We travel together until the walls of Avila. After that, they shrug. Every man answers to his own courage. That's unfair, Ysabel protests slightly. What about those of us who are neither men nor particularly fond of answering to anything? Every soul, then, Martin amends. A quick flash of a smile, satisfied? For now, Isabel says. You set out again, the small caravan straggling into motion. Remedios with the pot still hanging, Martin's mare with one of the lighter bales tied cleverly behind the saddle, the rescued mule bearing salvaged goods. Miguel perched carefully behind Hernan, hands gripping the stonebreaker's belt. The pass ahead looks little different than it did at dawn, rock and frost and sky. On some level it feels wrong that the world can look so unchanged when everything crossing it has shifted. As you walk, the muttered roar of hooves reaches you from behind. You turn. This time it is not Ysabel's theater. 4 riders crest the bend lower down the road, cloaks snapping, lances upright. Iron badges glint on their breasts, the Lion of Castile and the words, Por la Hermandad. Real officers of the Holy Brotherhood. For a heartbeat your blood runs cold. You picture their eyes on the carts, on the stones covering the dead, on Miguel's habit. You imagine how the story could look from their saddles, a group of strangers, a trail of blood, a monk in tow. Then Martin squares their shoulders. Let me speak, they say quietly. And for the love of the saints, no one mention fake badges. The riders draw up as they near, horses stamping, breath steaming. They are as Ysabel described, iron caps, padded jacks, short swords at their sides, crossbows slung across their backs. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with a neatly trimmed beard, eyes you all with a practiced, assessing gaze. Cult, he says, though you already have, by order of their highnesses, these roads are not safe. We noticed, Ysabel mutters under their breath. Martin steps forward a little, hands in plain sight. We have just come from a robbery site a quarter league back, they say calmly. 2 carts taken, 4 bodies. We buried them under stones by the bend. The men who did it are gone into the hills with part of the cargo. We salvaged what we could not carry, and this brother, they gestured toward Miguel, was being taken against his will to some lord's hall under the excuse of questioning. The Hermandad officer's gaze flicks to Miguel's habit, to the rope marks on his wrists, to the scattered goods. You expect me to believe, he says slowly, that 4 travelers happened upon such mischief, fought off a gang of cutthroats, and stole their prize. No stealing, Hernan says mildly. We just did the road's work for you. You're welcome. The man's eyes narrow. Careful, he says. The king frowns on volunteers. You feel anger spark. Does the king frown on his subjects left dead in the frost? You ask, surprising yourself with the sharpness in your voice. On monks taken from their cloisters with no warrant shown? We could have walked on and said nothing. We did not. The officer turns that measuring gaze on you fully for the first time. There is a beat of silence. Then, very slowly, he swings down from his saddle. He walks past you without a word, examines the loaded mule, lifts the edge of a bale to see the markings of a merchant's seal. He asks Miguel his name, his monastery, a few questions about dates. Miguel answers as best he can, still pale but steady now that outrage has found its feet. The officer listens. Then he sighs, a sound half weary, half resigned. The king has laws, he says at last, but men have long memories and short tempers, and lords have their own ways of making inquiries. His mouth tightens. You are fortunate those wolves pulled you from their path, brother. Another pack might have been worse. He looks back at you, at Martin, at Hernan, at Ysabel, taking you in again as if for the first time. What you did was reckless, he says. If those men had dug in, we'd be fishing your bodies from the ravine. Next time you see armed thieves, you keep your heads down and send word. That is our work. If we had waited, Hernan says evenly, you'd be counting more bodies on the road. That is the truth of it. A muscle jumps in the officer's jaw. Then, unexpectedly, he barks a short laugh. You sound like my wife, he says. She says if we waited for orders before doing anything in our village, the wheat would rot in the field. He mounts again in one practice swing. We'll go see this cairn of yours, he says, and follow what trail remains. Perhaps we'll catch a few of these dogs yet. If you truly wish to be useful, take the brother to Avila, present him to the bishop's man at the cathedral, and tell him what you told me. Use my name, Diego de Sotillo. He's less likely to have you thrown out by the sacristan that way. He snaps his reins. His horse sidles, then moves on, the other 3 riders following. As they pass, he pauses long enough to toss you a small object. You catch it by reflex, fingers closing around cold iron, a badge. Not the real seal of the Amandadad, no lion in legend, but a plain disc stamped with a cross and a number, a patrol token, proof of a sort that you have spoken with them. If anyone along the road gives you trouble, Diego de Sotillo says, show them that. It won't stop a bandit's bolt, but it might make a toll-keeper blink twice before he triples his price. Then they are gone, hooves ringing on the stones, cloaks snapping like flags in the thin mountain wind. You open your hand. The iron warms against your palm, small and heavy. A simple thing, a kind of key of its own rough sort. Eusebio leans over your shoulder. Careful, they say. You'll start a collection. One day you'll rattle when you walk, covered in badges and marks and promises from every stone between here and Toledo. You close your fingers around the token and tuck it into your pouch beside your mother's coin. 2 different kinds of luck, you think. Or 2 different kinds of burden. As you turn your face once more toward the pass and the distant idea of Avila, the road feels a little less like a line you follow and more like something you are slowly helping to redraw. Not with magic doors or monsters from tales, but with small, stubborn acts, piling stones over strangers, shouting on empty roads, refusing to look away. The mountains watch in their slow, patient way. The wind carries the faintest scent of pine and far-off smoke. You walk. You are tired. You are alive. You are, increasingly, entangled in more than your own story. And somewhere under the stone, the land you promised to listen to feels, if not at peace, then at least a fraction less wounded than it was at dawn.